Carlito Galvez Jr. says that they will be transparent in due time amid public pressure to disclose vaccine prices.
Pagka nagkaroon po tayo ng breach of contract, ay pwede po mag-withdraw ang vaccine makers at mawawala po yung ating mga access. So yung 148 million po, makakompromise po yun.
FDA Director General Eric Domingo says the Philippines can derive some benefit from lagging behind in vaccine procurement. Domingo said this lag time can be used to observe how vaccines are doing abroad.
Tsaka yun na rin ang maganda na hindi tayo yung nauna na gumamit ng mga bakuna. Kasi ngayon na meron ng mga 5 million, 7 million to 7 million na nabakunahan, now we're seeing kung ano yung mga dapat na kailangan nating pag-ingatan.
The Department of Health will be conducting more extensive COVID-19 testing for inbound travelers to ensure their safety from new SARS-CoV variants and prevent the potential spread to the bigger population. Now, how can government ensure protection while the country is in danger of other possible variants? We discuss in this episode of The Chiefs. And welcome to this Thursday edition of The Chiefs. And with us, of course, are Ana Marie Pamintuan of the Philippine Star, who will be joining us in a few minutes, I suppose, and Luchi Cruz Valdez, the head of News 5, who is now online. Hi, Luchi, and happy Thursday.
Hello, happy Thursday. Malapit na ang weekend.
Tatlong araw na, 4 na araw na lang, Lunes na ulit.
I know. Oh, big news, big news.
Yeah.
Ako na mag-umpisa.
Nako, teka. Secret yung pinasa sa'yo, ha? Huwag muna pag-usapan.
Hindi yan. Ikaw talaga, may mali siya ka eh. Good news to sa TV5. Partnership ng ABS-CBN and TV5. Diba showbiz ako?
Beginning this weekend, ha?
Yes, ASAP and the King, FPJ. Okay, abangan yan this Sunday.
Those programs are now back on Free TV with Channel 5.
Yes. Of course, marami pa, no? Ano pa? Anong gusto mo? Graft against, corruption or graft charges against BSP Governor Ben Jokno.
Oh, Ben Jokno.
Yes. So, over the awarding of the national ID to this company without bidding.
Okay.
Kilogram, if I'm not mistaken.
Okay.
So, yun.
And of course, the other big story today, and something that we should be talking about, is, of course, well, that's also Biden, of course, how can I forget? We stayed up until 2 o'clock for that. And the other big story today about COVID is that the number of those who tested positive for COVID-19 who rode in a passenger jet with another COVID positive with the UK variant has now gone up to 14. Now, that's not as bad as we would have thought if only they did not test negative when they arrived here.
Exactly. So it looks like the first test done after landing needs to be vetted by another test, no?
Yes.
Parang ganun na nangyayari.
Yes.
So double testing na.
So that raises a lot of questions about the previous arrivals and whether they've been tested properly as well.
Right.
And then we go into protocols now. Okay, maybe let's bring in our first guest for tonight, and let's bring him in specifically for this particular issue, among other things, of course. Joining us is Dr. Rontgene Solante, the head of the San Lazaro Hospital Adult Infectious Diseases and Tropical Medicine Department. Dr. Solante, good evening and thank you for joining us. Welcome to the Chiefs.
Good evening, Doc.
Yes, good evening, Luchi. Good evening.
Ed, sir. Yes, sir. Sir, we were just talking about, yung 14 na yung mga nag-positive na pasahero nitong passenger jet na kasabay nitong si UK variant na pasyente. But the thing is, they tested negative upon departing Dubai and they tested negative as well upon arriving here. Tapos, in the second test, 14 na silang nag-positive.
On the 5th day. No? On the 5th day.
Anybody you ask will certainly ask that question na, teka, pwede pala mangyari yun. So, have we been doing it right all along?
Yeah, actually, that's the nature of the RT-PCR because the time that you will be exposed and you don't have the symptoms, then it will take days, no, like 5 to 7 days, for you to be positive. And the rate of positivity will likewise also lessens from the time of contact up to the 7th to 10th day, because the virus,
Yes.
the load of the virus will not anymore be detected. No? So those are some of the things that we need to know. Not everyone will be positive, but if you highly suspect and follow through that this particular individual really has direct contact and a negative test, it will have a negative at first, then it's also prudent that you have to repeat it again, just to make sure, even if the patient doesn't have yet the symptoms.
Yes,
Because
Doc,
in the pre-symptomatic period, 3 to 2 days before the appearance of the symptom, you'll already have the positive result.
Yes, Doc. But have we been following this procedure or protocol? I mean, did we have this protocol in mind in the last 8 or 9 months that we were trying to guard against COVID coming in?
Yes, that's actually our protocol, no? Especially when dealing with secondary contacts of COVID confirmed. Okay, first is that when they will be exposed, automatic they'll have to have a quarantine. They have to be isolated and observed for symptoms during the 14 days from the time that they were exposed, and they will be tested also. If they don't have the symptoms and then they are negative, but they still have to be isolated for 14 days, just to make sure that nobody will be exposed again as a tertiary contact.
Yes, sir. Well, I asked
But
sir
that
that.
is
Sige,
surprising.
go ahead.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Lucy.
That's really surprising to us, because this is the first time that we've heard that you can actually test negative in an initial test and then find out later that you are positive after all, no? Ngayon ko lang po narinig na that protocol has been in place ever since we started contact tracing and testing and putting secondary people suspected of COVID in quarantine. This is the first time we're hearing this.
And Doc, before you answer,
Actually,
let me add na rin to that. Kasi po, now the DOH is saying that they want to institute a second test 5 days later.
Yes.
So by that po, it does sound like it wasn't really part of the protocol to begin with. Ngayon lang sila
Right,
consider
yeah.
ng second testing after 5 days.
Yeah, this is the rationale for that, no? Since we are watching and monitoring a highly delicate case, which is a UK variant, then that's the primary purpose there. Like, if the first test among those who were exposed is negative, I would get another test just to make sure that we didn't miss anything from the first test and another 5 days from the exposure.
So this is just because of the variant. If the variant had not come to us, we would not have instituted that repeat test. Is that it?
I think so. I think so, Lucy, no? Because we are carefully watching this variant, and as we always mention, no? In fact, we mentioned that all the contacts, the secondary and the tertiary contacts of the single individual with the UK variant should be clearly monitored, closely monitored. Why? Because we know that there always a higher risk that any of those who were exposed got the infection because of the increased transmissibility, 50-60%, no? So mas lalo tayong mag-modify sa protocol natin just to make sure na walang makalusot. So I think this is modified because of this UK variant.
So this is something that we're going to start doing for all, or just for the arriving OFWs or passengers from abroad? What's the recommendation?
So from now on, so anybody who will be UK variant positive, then the secondary and all the tertiary contacts should be traced and closely monitored, because we don't want what happened to other countries.
And now we're joined by Ami Pamintuan from the port area. Medyo na-traffic siguro si Ami, kaya ngayon lang pumasok.
Maraming truck dito. Good evening, Doctor.
Hi, Ami.
Doctor, hindi nyo ba pinag-aaralan kung kailangang baguhin din yung protocols for quarantine? Kasi kung ganyan na patong-patong yung kailangan yung testing, hindi ba kailangan medyo tagalan pa?
I think because of this nangyari, I think they are now doing something that they might modify the way kasi ang minomodify lang naman dito yung the repeat testing of the contact, no? So for ordinary SARS-CoV, we don't do that na i-repeat natin siya, no? But since this is an alert, I call this an alert patient because of the higher risk of transmission, then at this point we have to really closely monitor those in contact. Even if they're initially negative, they have to be monitored for symptoms. Even if they don't have the symptoms, let's try testing them. We don't know if, although we know that the probability will be negative because the longer you get the test from the exposure, the higher is the negative test. But again, no, I think this has something to do with more strict implementation of testing.
Saka kung asymptomatic pero positive, completely ruled out ba dito sa variant na to dahil more transmissible, completely ruled out ba yung home quarantine? Will you recommend that?
No. So once they are positive with this new UK variant, they should be taken out and be isolated in a strict quarantine facility. We should not allow them to be staying at home with this UK variant positive. No, that should not be the case.
Okay, just for clarification purposes, so you take the test, the initial test when? On the first day, on the second day? How do you how do you schedule the repeat test as opposed to the initial test?
Okay, so that what happened here is that so they were exposed in the airplane, no? So upon arrival, they were tested. Okay. Because we don't know if the exposure happened in the airplane or it happened before they embarked in the airplane. So meron kang baseline. Now after the baseline, then you still have to do the test even if they don't have the symptom. Kasi ang una mong trigger for retesting is if they have the symptom. Kasi mas higher ang possibility. But if you don't have the symptom, then you have to repeat the test again 5 days after that particular exposure in the airplane, just to make sure na even if they're negative, to have a higher rate of catching that if they are really positive, even if they are asymptomatic, it can be detected.
But Doc, wouldn't it be more cost efficient to just test them 5 days after they arrive than to have a second test after 5 days?
Yes, right. Kasi what's the point in testing them when they arrive?
No, that's why. The point there is that when they were exposed in the airplane, we don't know yet if were also exposure prior to there. Remember, these are people coming from outside of the country.
Yes.
Yes, Doc.
Right. Okay.
Well, we understand, Doc, but the same question still holds there, whether they were exposed before they rode the airplane or after they rode the airplane. 5 days and later would be the time when they would start to
exhibit symptoms.
When they would test positive, I suppose, upon RT-PCR testing. So, I don't know lang, theoretically, wouldn't it be more cost-efficient to just have the test 5 days after they arrive? Because that would now cover everything else from the plane, contact from the plane, and contact before the plane boarding.
Well, it depends on how they look at it, no? Kasi pwede namang ganun siya, Ed, no? I-quarantine mo sila, put them in an isolation facility, and then you'll just wait for the 5 days after and do the test. Pwede rin ganun. And that would be, you're not doing the two tests, parang
masakit din sa ilong yun.
Mas makasave ka niyan. But you know, Ed, when you are in that situation, so even if I'm the one handling this, I would really test them right there and then upon arrival, and then put them in the quarantine, and then observe 5 to 7 days, then test them again.
Okay, Doc.
That's how it should be.
Well, Doc, the other question that this raises is this. All this time we've been told that the airplane is one of the safest places to be when it comes to blocking infections through COVID-19 because of the HEPA filters. And now this infection of 14 people, 14 passengers, raises a lot of questions about exactly how effective these HEPA filters are, I would think.
This is now the reason that if you have a carrier having that variant which has a higher risk of transmissibility, then the more it will be efficiently transmitted in that particular setting. Now, we don't know how the ventilation, how the filter or whatever, no, because we were not in that plane. But if you are there in the plane for how many hours? 6, 7, 8 hours.
Dubai.
And that particular and that particular passenger is going to the comfort room 3, 4 times, and then going there and going back. So that's already a risk because he's walking, and how many people he met in the aisle, and then sitting, and then he goes up again, go to the CR, and goes back. That's already an exposure.
Doctor, considering this new development, is the medical community recommending more restrictions, for example, in travel? Kasi halimbawa sa Negros, nagagalit yung local government. Hindi daw nagsabi yan dumating na, I think 4 or 5, na nanggaling daw from the UK, na nandun pala sila, na nanggaling pala sila doon. Are you recommending any particular protocols, additional?
We have to have another what we call this protocol locally, no? Because what we want to prevent now is from Manila and then transferring again to Cebu, to Davao, or to other provinces, and that will really be very dangerous. Okay, why? Because in this current situation now, that some of our you look at the people now, there are element of leniency in wearing the face mask and the face shield, and that's very dangerous.
So, are we changing the protocols because of this? Do you think we need to adjust the protocols again?
They should review the protocol local to local travel, especially now that we have that 14 case. No, I think the most important part here now is also looking at the secondary and the tertiary contacts of these 14. And from there, they need to really adopt and change some of these protocols, especially on timing of testing.
Gusto yung hospital facilities, doctor? Kasi the government, apart from the variant arriving here, nanonote na nila yung surge nga na that people were warning about because of the holidays, saka yung mga festivals. Kumusta yung facilities natin? Are you close to being overwhelmed o okay naman, kakayanin pa?
Yeah, so far in San Lazaro, we haven't had yet any surge of cases the past 3 weeks now, and in fact our bed capacity for COVID-19 has not gone up more than 50%. So I think for me, I don't see any reason yet that, but we are always prepared in anything and any eventuality that there will be local surge, especially here in Metro Manila.
Do you think the quarantine status will have to be changed pag kumalat tong variant, which God forbid it won't, no? But is that, I mean, how much of a threat would that be pag nagkaroon nga ng local transmission, which it now appears nga mukhang, is this classified as a local transmission to begin with?
Now,
Yung nangyari,
the local transmission will only be defined once those who were in the plane will infect another one in her household or the neighbor.
So wala pa. Yeah.
Wala pa. Wala pa.
So, well, so far that's the good news, no? But if it does come to that local transmission, yung bang inaasahan natin na general community quarantine na modified GCQ ay hindi na mangyayari, or is there a scenario where baka bumalik pa tayo sa ECQ or MECQ?
I think, okay, ang nakita ko dito, Ma'am Lucy, no, they will have to look at the barangay where these individuals are located.
Granular pa rin. Yeah.
Granular pa rin. Tapos titingnan nila lahat yon, yung sinong na-expose sa community, sinong na-expose when the people work. Ganon ang magiging mangyari niyan.
Yeah. Yes. Okay. Yeah. Okay, talking about the vaccine, just a few words from you because we understand you're part of the vaccine panel. Ano pong masasabi nyo dito sa very controversial Sinovac, no, with its 50.4% efficacy, and the fact that the government seems bent on really purchasing more Sinovac vaccines?
Lucia, I will refrain from giving comments until we are finished with the evaluation. Sorry, I cannot give my comments
okay.
yet now. But
Pero Doc,
The
by
50
that answer,
yeah,
you're saying that you are still evaluating. So how is that we are already negotiating for particular vaccines when you are still evaluating them?
actually, lahat ng mga bakuna na in fact, there are vaccines that are still undergoing phase 3 trial.
Opo.
Nagne-negotiate na tayo, no? So we have to understand this, no? Why? Okay. Because most of these vaccines, where these vaccines are being made, 80% of this will be taken from the country that these vaccines are being made. Ang matira na lang yan, 20%. Pag-aagawan yan ng ilang bansa, 30, 40. So you have to have that reservation and allocation so that by the time that there will be good data that maganda naman siya, hindi naman yan na sigurado nang ina-allocate or kinuha mo na eh. Just have to have that reservation because otherwise, wala tayong makukuha for this year. Look at Novavax, look at the other vaccines they are still ongoing phase 3 trial, but our government is really bent on assurance from these companies that once the phase 3 trial, once the evaluation is there and it is approved, then we can have that reservation. We can get the reservation. It's normal.
So,
normal
pwede
yan.
pang bawiin. Pwede pang bawiin kung
Yes, most
sa
likely.
evaluation nyo ay hindi maganda. Parang ganun.
Yes.
Okay.
Pero Doc, in the case of the Sinopharm vaccine na ginamit dun sa PSG, how does that work? It never underwent any study and it never went through the processes that are required by the DOH. Well, not to put you on the spot, pero it did happen last year pa ho. And it did raise a lot of questions that were never answered. I'm just wondering, from a medical point of view and from a vaccine expert's point of view, how should this be viewed?
That is really considered illegal because the fact that it has not undergone the regular legal review process, because we have that that under the law na ginawa na before a vaccine will be used, it should undergo through those process. So for me, kung hindi ka dumadaan nun, then that's it. That's illegal.
Okay. Dr. Rontgene Solante, head of the San Lazaro Hospital Adult Infectious Diseases and Tropical Medicine Department. Actually, we should introduce you more as a member of the vaccine experts panel.
No.
Thank you, Doc.
Not to mention it's shorter.
Thank you.
But more important too.
Thank you.
Doctor,
Bye.
maraming salamat po for joining us tonight. We will just go into a break, so please stay with us.
Finance Secretary says there's no point consulting the University of the Philippines in terminating the 1989 Accord. Meanwhile, a similar accord with the Polytechnic University of the Philippines is also in danger of being scrapped.
PUP has an agreement with the DND, but I haven't seen a copy. Former Secretary, Minister Indrele denies that he ever signed that. But if you can present to me a copy, I will abrogate it also.
The military is expecting the University of the Philippines to respect higher authority regarding the entry of state forces in its campuses.
You cannot prevent the Defense Department and the security sector from not doing their job because you're bent on pursuing your academic or what do you call this, autonomy.
Welcome back to the Chiefs. We are now in the final stage of our conversation, and now joining us is National Security Adviser Hermogenes Esperon Jr. Sir, thank you for joining us, and welcome back to the Chiefs.
Welcome,
Yes,
Secretary
Thanks
Esperon.
for having me here, Ms. Lucy Valdez and Ms. Ami Pamintuan. Do we have...
Welcome, sir.
Yes, sir. Sir, I'm Ed Lingao.
Oh,
Yes, sir.
Ed Lingao, yes.
Yes, sir. Sir, I'll zoom in to the question, the primary question at least, with the abrogation of the agreement between DND and UP noong 1989. Exactly what happens next? What can we expect? Will the military and the police be setting up detachments? Will there be patrols allowed into, for example, UP? What exactly should we expect?
No, there's no plan to establish any detachment, military detachment that is, inside the UP, except for perhaps for personnel that will be assigned to the ROTC unit of the University of the Philippines. There's not even a plan yet to establish a police station inside the UP campus. Wala pa.
So, sir, you say yet. Do we take it to mean that that is not being ruled out? Do we take it to mean that that may eventually happen?
Well, that can happen, but the deployment and establishment of stations would be the call of the NCR police office and to be implemented by the Philippine National Police, which is, by the way, no longer under the Department of National Defense.
Yes, sir.
LG. Sir, so why the urgency that Secretary Lorenzana had to unilaterally abrogate it kung wala pa naman palang plano? How are you going to, I guess, enforce the objective of making sure that quote-unquote UP is not a hotbed for recruitment of the CPP-NPA? How are they going to do that? Saka, why the urgency kung wala pa naman palang plan?
Oh, well, we can do other things. We can always gather some information about the UP. And we know a lot about UP. We have been reading about the writings of Bobby Tiglao, for example, how the League of Filipino Students was established. It was a column, it was written about kailan lang, last week lang yun. We know that it is there. LFS is being used as a recruitment platform for the youth. We know that LFS members find themselves getting into encounters. And there are other organizations which may be recruiting students.
Pero General, security forces have been monitoring those activities in UP. Siguro na estudyante pa kayo sa pistay eh. Di ba? Kahit nung panahon nyo,
of course.
So what's the objective? What's the objective sa pagtatanggal ng yun ang tinatanong lang naman, what will happen now?
What will happen now?
Sa pag-alis nung, because you can still do what you've been doing. Anong madadagdag sa, what could you not do? Nung nakalagay yung...
Because doon sa agreement, kailangan magbigay ng prior notice before you conduct search warrants, which is an impediment in police enforcement. And that is never done in communities. You advise people there that you will search them or serve warrants. I think that's not the normal police way of doing business enforcement. And why don't the other schools have that kind of arrangements? So, mukhang UP at saka PUP ang mayroon. What gives? Can they not be covered by the normal, usual, universal way of enforcing police enforcement?
Yes, sir. Well, sir, I suppose
Pero
yung
kasi, sir,
court-issued warrants, I suppose, wala namang question doon eh. Kasi if it's a search or an arrest warrant issued by a court, then that really has to be served whether or not may paalam sa universidad eh.
No,
We're more
that is contained in the agreement.
we understand, sir. We understand.
You have to notify the chancellor or some officials there before you could do it.
Yes, sir. We understand, sir. But going back to my question, sir, what about other operations? Maliban dun sa search and arrest warrants, which in my view nga should be able to should be allowed to your group, provided there's a valid court order. What about other operations, for example, that are not covered by court orders? Will this follow now?
Like what?
Anything from patrols to other activities.
Are normal police operations. That should be done. In fact, because ang purpose naman ng police patrol visibility is to protect the citizenry. Are we not glad that the police would come in the neighborhood, perhaps in the dark places of the Diliman compound, tapos papatrolyahan nila? Meron tayong barangays dyan na maraming drugs dyan. Maraming transient dyan na dumadaan sa compound ng UP na wala mang nagche-checkpoint at libre-libre sila dyan na pasok loob at pasok labas at kung minsan nandun lang sila sa loob. Marami silang pwedeng gawin dyan.
Pero sir, hindi naman drugs yung sinasabing dahilan sa abrogation ng agreement, di ba? Ang sinasabing dahilan nga is because UP seems to be a hotbed nga for the CPP-NPA recruitment. So, ang tanong nga, sir, is anong gagawin para mapigilan yun?
Well,
iba naman kasi yung drugs and...
maraming paraan yan. Well, that's why we are now informing the public about the kinds of organizations that may be approaching our students, who may recruit them. Sinasabi na namin kung ano yung mga organisasyon na gumagawa niyan because we have a lot of organizations who have very good advocacies. But it turns out that there are elements inside those organizations who would do things other than the advocacies of the organizations. Halimbawa, ang Gabriela, napakagandang organization. But why do we find former Gabriela youth holding arms, fighting the troops? Saan sila nagsimula? Sino nag-recruit sa kanila para umakyat sa NPA, para sumampa?
Sir, ibahin natin yung ano yung hindi ninyo gagawin after the abrogation. Halimbawa, mag-aaresto ba kayo doon kung walang arrest warrant? Pwede ba yan? Yung hot pursuit arrest?
Kung wala kang arrest warrant, wala. Unless it's a hot pursuit or it's what they would call...
yung hot pursuit, tuloy yun.
Hot pursuit, tuloy yun. Maski naman sa labas maski naman sa parte ng Pilipinas.
Yung mga halimbawa, nagsiseminar na grupo na identified nyo, you are linking with the CPP-NPA. Will you break up those seminars?
Seminars. Ang seminars, kung ang pinagseseminaran nila ay kung paano sila mamumundok at alam mo na, edi mag-aresto ka. Pero pag nagsiseminar sila about the socio-economic situation in the Philippines, that is a fair subject sa academic freedom. Sabi nga natin, what are the elements of academic freedom? Who can teach? What can be taught? How subjects can be taught? And who are allowed to study? Saan doon ang police operations? Wala naman eh. Wala namang connection yung police operations. Those four
So hindi
elements
nyo
are all-
papasukin, sir.
Ay,
So sir,
no, of course,
is it safe
of
to
course.
say na yung mga symposium, halimbawa, wala
Yes.
kaming makikitang mga sundalo ron or mga pulis na
Yes.
nagmo-monitor ng mga speech ng mga speakers, ganon. Wala nun.
I cannot say na walang nagmo-monitor because there are many ways of monitoring that. Things that are happening. Do I have to send there a soldier or I'll just ask somebody from the community to tell us what's happening there?
Kaya nga sir, nagagawa naman yun dati, we're
So,
sure
anong
eh.
connection na
Alam
yan?
naman namin yan eh. Pag mga symposium, I'm sure may mga planted na mga intelligence, di ba,
So,
operatives, di ba?
Saan ngayon ang police operations doon? Saan ngayon ang police operations? Bakit kailangan magkaroon ka ng agreement na ganito?
Yung
kaya nga,
mga rally, hindi nyo naman i-break up yung mga, maya't maya may rally dyan kahit
Depende rin sa rally. Ang rally, pag mga rally dyan sa loob ng Diliman campus, dyan sa University Avenue, bakit mo naman i-break up yan? That's simple advocacy and activism. Sabihin na natin activism. Activism is it's okay with us. When you advocate new ideas or even question the ways of government or the ways of society itself, okay lang yun. Bakit mo arestuhin yun? Ito yung lagi namin sinasabi noon na ang activism is fair and square. Fair and square. Activism is not terrorism. And terrorism is not activism. But there's a thin line between activism and supporting, for example, armed struggle of the National Democratic Front of this Communist Party of the Philippines, which is the overthrow of the democratic system of the government. And they advocate already armed struggle, armed revolution. Iba na yon. Iba na yon. Iba na yon. Sabi nila, makibaka, okay lang, makibaka. Ibagsak ang gobyerno, okay lang. Pero pag tumawid ka na at nag-armas ka na, pumunta ka na doon sa ranks ng NPA, iba na yon. That's already something else. So, sige lang,
Yes, sir.
magprotesta, magsulat, mag-rally,
Sir, yes sir. Sir, last month yung Anti-Terrorism Council designated the CPP-NPA as a terrorist group. We have not yet heard kung yung ATC is going to designate yung other groups na nililink ng gobyerno sa terorismo. For example, yung ibang mga grupong binanggit nyo kanina, ilang beses nang nililink ng gobyerno sa terrorist groups eh. I'm wondering lang kung sakali lang na ang ATC laparan o lawakan yung designation to include yung mga militanteng grupo kagaya ng Gabriela at LFS and so on down the line, paano yung mga yan sa campus? Yan ba'y ipagbabawal nyo rin sa campus using police powers o is that even on your radar?
Unang-una, ang designation ay kailangang i-define natin. Ang designation ay by virtue of United Nations Circular 1343, which have named organizations to be terrorists like the Communist Party of the Philippines and the New People's Army. So, i-designate na natin sila by way of copying that resolution from the United Nations and also by the declarations of the United States, of UK, of the European Union, of New Zealand, of Canada, Australia. So, designated sila na terrorist. Yung mga ibang organizations, hindi pa. Because we have yet to prove that through proscription.
Pero sir, magkaiba sa rin dalawa, di ba? Magkaiba po yung dalawa. Yung proscription is through court pa.
Proscription is an action of the Court of Appeals.
Opo.
And we have filed for proscription of the CPP-NPA. Ngayon, kung yung CPP-NPA sasabihin niya na membro ko ito, halimbawa sinabi ni Season, ang mga membro ko ay ang Kabataan Makabayan, ang League of Filipino Students, Naka-videotape yan eh. Pag na-proscribe yon, then we will move against these organizations also.
Yes, sir. So pag designation pa lang, hindi pa ho kayo gagalaw. Yun ba ibig niyo sabihin?
Hindi pa. Proscription ang mas mabigat. We will work on that because we need to be thorough on that. In fact, alam nyo naman, sa February 2nd pa lang yung Supreme Court hearings on the Anti-Terrorism Act. Ano? So, na-postpone yan. Dapat nung January 19. By the way, I serve as the Vice Chairman of the Anti-Terrorism Council.
Opo. Yes, sir. Sir, I'm also wondering, paano po kung na-abrogate na nga yung agreement with UP, paano kung the school insists on its power to regulate the entry of people, which I suppose in a way it has because it has its own regulations. Of course, barring a case like
regulate the
search
police?
warrant, except for
That within the
example po,
charter of
except search warrants and arrest warrants because those are issued by the courts. Pero what if a school or UP decides na pag wala naman kayong warrant, hindi kayo pwedeng pumasok dito dahil we have the power to regulate the entry?
Can it prohibit the police from entering Diliman?
I don't know, sir. What do you think?
Actually, sir, it doesn't even have to be UP because as we speak, meron ng mga bills na fina-file na gusto na nilang
if it is,
i-institutionalize nga yung academic freedom by
Gawin yung batas.
amending
Gawin
the
nating
existing
batas
law.
yan.
Yes,
Gawin
yes.
nating batas na ipagbawal nyo ang pulis sa mga communities.
No, sir.
Okay
Sir,
ba yun sa inyo? Ipagbawal nyo.
Kasi-
sir, we're asking, sir, we're
Hindi
asking
naman
your point of view.
yeah, your-
What is
your
government's
opinion
position
on
on
that.
this?
That's
Can a
impossible.
school
We
can a
might as well abolish this government if you don't allow the police anymore in the communities.
So, okay, what's your opinion on this bill where the senators and the congressmen are one in saying that it should be institutionalized in the law and make academic freedom as part of the UP Charter law in itself, strengthen that article that
Academic
supports it?
freedom is not in the UP Charter. It is in the Constitution.
Oh, there you
It's
go.
already
Well,
there. It's
that-
already
that
there.
makes it even-
So it is
yeah.
protected already by the Constitution. It is not protected by the UP Charter.
General,
Okay, so-
General, itong
It's
abrogation,
guaranteed under the Constitution.
General, itong abrogation ng agreement, is this part of a bigger campaign? What's the end game? Kasi lagi sinasabi recently ni Presidente na he intends to end the insurgency during his term. Yung ba yung long term? Kasi meron na kayo
Are you not glad that we could end this insurgency that has been with us for 52 years?
So,
By golly,
yun yung end game. Yun yung end game.
sana nanalo na lang sila. Sana nanalo na lang sila. Pero 52 years na ginugulo tayo ng mga to.
So,
1970 pa na ako mismo muntik na mag-recruit bago ako pumuntang PMA.
Saan yon? Saan?
Ay,
Nung
sa
high school?
high school. Oo. Nag-immerse na ako noon eh. Ang mga teacher ko noon eh, mga PKP noon eh. O di, kung paano kung kasama ko doon sa namatay na 4 na kaklase ko. Alin ngayon ang mas maganda? Ako na nabuhay at nagsilbi sa bayan o yung mga kaklase kong namatay na 3rd year college pa lang sila?
Sir, what about those? Okay, sir.
Napakagaling nila. O paano
Sir-
kung anak mo yon? Paano kung anak mo yon?
So may part
Third year namatay na sa enkwentro. Samantalang scholar ng Philippine Science High School. Ay, hindi ko kini-question yung kanilang mga pakiramdam noon sa mga nangyayari noong panahon na yun dahil ako mismo ay nasa harap din naman ng Malacanang na ako ay kasama sa first quarter storm. Pero pag nagkamali ako, di sana ako pinulot noon. Or rather than becoming an officer and having served. Hindi ko naman sinasabing may nagawa ako, but my parents would certainly have appreciated na nakagraduate ako ng college at nagsilbi sa bayan.
Sir, I think this whole thing also harks back to the fear when we remember what happened during martial law when there were, extrajudicial killings and mga disappearances, no? Ang daming desaparecidos among students and
Tama yun.
faculty,
Lucy.
no?
Let me tell you about the biggest desaparecidos. 4,000 of them were purged internally by the CPP-NPA. Kinasuhan ko nga si Joma Sison doon sa Inupakan murder case. Tama yun, maraming nawala. Maraming nawala. Talagang itong insurgency na to has brought us so much misery. Our economy could not take off in the countryside. Underdeveloped tayo. Dahil sa kaguluhan dyan sa kanayunan. Kung wala sana itong New People's Army, ang dami na natin, ang rayo na ng narating natin. Ngayon, nandiyan pa rin sila. 52 years na. Sabi nga ni Ruben Guevara, co-founder ng CPP-NPA, sabi niya, kung talagang mananalo tayo sana o talagang maniniwala sa atin ng Pilipino, di sana panalo na tayo. Pero hindi. Because itong nature ng CPP-NPA is conflict ng classes. Hatred ang inaano nito sa ating society. Para lang sila mamuno sa bansa. Papayagan ba natin yan? Dapat mawala na yung mga armadong yan. Just imagine, armado sila, nangingikil sa kabayanan, nanununog, pumapatay. Why are we allowing that? Tika muna, baka mawala tayo sa usaping UP. Kasi napupunta tayo doon sa ginagawa nilang pagre-recruit eh. Teka muna, di ba? Hindi ba konektado rin yan sa UP?
Well, yung mga human rights abuses rin naman, sir. I mean, you will grant that the government also abused its powers and the military, no?
Is it a matter of policy? Is it a matter of policy? Nung chief of staff ako nagtatag ng Human Rights Office ng Armed Forces.
I guess the assurance...
Is it a matter of policy na mayroong human rights violations? Of course not. Sabi lang yun ng Communist Party of the Philippines na panay human rights kami. Sila kaya? Hindi ba human rights yung patay mo, 4,000 na tao mo? Hindi ba human rights yung Rano Massacre? Isang church, nagsisimba, pinatay nila lahat sa Davao?
Hindi ba nahihirapan ngayon, General, yung mga human rights accusations against the Duterte administration? Di ba nahihirapan dun sa... Di ba naapektuhan yung campaign na yan?
Yung human rights has been weaponized na pag merong mali dyan, sasabihin nila human rights violations. Pero is that a matter of state policy to violate human rights? Or that is brought about by the conflict itself? It is brought about by the conflict itself. May mga nangyayari dyan na, kuminsan nga itong CPP-NPA, yung kanilang mga assassins, yung kanilang mga esparo na tinatawag, pumapatay nga sila ng walang kamuwang-muwang na tao, tapos pagbibintakan nila yung military. At may proof kami niyan. Umamin na yung mga nandyan sa Southern Tagalog na nag-train ng, sabi nila, esparo daw, special unit, assassins. Pero mga dirty tricks ng CPP-NPA yan eh. So sino sa palagay ninyo ang violative of human rights? Itong mga rebelde na to o yung police at military?
Okay.
Mahirap, di ba? They can always accuse us and we are trying our best. Kaya nga nung chief of staff ako, tinatag ko ang Human Rights Office.
Okay. National Security Adviser Hermogenes Esperon. Sir, maraming salamat po for joining us tonight.
Thank you.
Salamat, sir.
Thank you, Ami.
Thank you.
Let's see, kala ko 20 minutes lang. Ganun pala, 25 naman pala.
Almost 30 minutes.
Almost.
Good night, sir.
Thank you, sir. Good night po.
Good night. Good night.
And that'll be all for this Thursday edition of The Chiefs. We hope what was discussed here will keep the conversation going. I'm Ed Lingao.
I'm Ami Pamintuan of the Philippine Star.
I'm Lucy Cruz Valdez of News 5, and we are One News.